Hello, guys. I just wanted to talk with you today about, well, a few things, but first I should just mention that I've been away from the channel for about 3 months now, actually, close to 3 months. I've been pretty busy um, making paintings. That's been taking up a lot of time. So the paintings are coming along, but I just wanted to get into. So since I've made my last video, Trump has gotten reelected. So we're about to have President Trump again, which, honestly, I guess I wouldn't say I'm fine with it. I didn't like either candidate. I voted for Jill Stein, but I guess if I had to pick one, I would have picked Trump, just because he's not quite as aggressive against free speech, and it seemed like the Biden-Harris White House they coordinated with Twitter and Facebook, and it's even come out in recent months that Mark Zuckerberg admits that the Biden White House had been trying to convince people, or they've been trying to push for people to get banned on social media, Facebook, Twitter. It's well known at this point that the Biden White House doesn't have a great record when it comes to free speech and social media, that they had taken aggressive actions against what they call misinformation. So that's a big reason why I didn't like Kamala, is that she had a problem with free speech, or her free speech. When she was running in 2019 as a Democrat in the primary, she was one of the first people to get kicked out, because she just didn't get the traction she needed, even with having a lot of the institutional support already built in. Like a lot of mainstream news sources were already talking very positively about her and giving her free publicity. So, but she would say, she said on a debate stage, particularly targeting Elizabeth Warren, challenging her to agree that Donald Trump needs to be banned from Twitter. And this was back in like 2019. And Kamala made a big stance, a bold stance, saying that Trump needs to be banned from Twitter. The sitting president needs to be kicked off of social media, was essentially what she was saying, which I thought was absurd, and I think many people did. And so she didn't do that well, and she dropped out pretty early. And then because Biden picked her, being that he made in the 2020 debate, in an early debate, right about the time that COVID was kicking off, he debated Biden, and Biden challenged him and said, let's agree that I challenge you to nominate a black woman as your vice president. Biden made a big stink about how important it was to nominate a black woman as the vice presidential candidate, even though it excludes like 95% of the population, something like that. I mean, if black people represent like 15% of the population, so black women would be like half of that. So we're talking about like 93% of the population as potential vice presidential candidates, that Biden said, no, you're not a black woman, so I'm not even considering you. And even then, Kamala is only half black. I mean, she has I think she has a Haitian father, or I think her father's from Haiti and her mother's from India. She's half black, half Indian. So even then, like, it's kind of debatable what her identity really is, and she's shifted back and forth on that. But the point is that I never really liked her, even from I never liked Kamala from the get-go, and I can't say I like Trump all that well either. I honestly think there's a lot of problems I have with Trump, particularly his anti-labor stance, his pure pro-business stance. He's not really when he talked to Elon Musk back in I don't know, August, September, I think it was maybe August, he spoke with Elon Musk on his on X. There was some kind of video that went around that where Elon Musk interviewed Trump, and they both, these two billionaires, the richest billionaire in the world and a billionaire who was about to become president, were joking about how they're joking and making light of the idea of firing striking unionized workers, and that's something I don't stand for. I'm not voting for someone who makes light of firing striking workers. Trump has never been pro-labor. He talks about it, and maybe some of the things he'll do if he passes some tariffs and he changes some of our trade policy to favor American manufacturing, we'll see. But I've never really thought that Trump was good for labor. Not to say that the Democrats are either. It's really, there really isn't a good choice there. I guess there are some ways you could say that Biden's White House, Biden had some good policy, like something about the National Labor Relations Board, like he got some people in there, or the head of the NLRB is maybe doing some good things, but it's really, we're at a point in this country where voting for the lesser of two evils, and really barely, because Biden has never been a friend of the worker either, even though he claims to be, and Kamala did very little as well to differentiate herself as pro-business or pro-labor over business, and it really got washed away. You could say early on in the election, right after she was nominated right after she became the choice for president, or for the Democratic nominee, and when she picked Tim Walz as her vice presidential nominee, and this even happened before she got the nomination. Like, it's important to remember how chaotic this election season really was. So, because neither Trump nor Biden, they both chose to not debate anyone in their primaries, even though they both had primary contenders. Trump is being challenged by Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley. Those were the two main people who would go into Democratic or Republican primaries and debates, and Trump chose to stay out of those debates, and just because he was already pretty much guaranteed to be he thought that it would be a liability to go into these debates and take his primary opponent seriously. And maybe he was right to do that from a strategic point of view, a political point of view, but from a Democratic point of view, he should have been on that debate stage with Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley. If he thinks that it's not very democratic, and not very. If Trump was so confident that he would get through the primaries, he should have been on that debate stage with Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley. So I never really liked that. But it was the same thing with Biden. Biden refused to debate. Who is it? Marianne Williamson, I believe, was on the debate stage. RFK was there at one point before he dropped out and went as an independent, and eventually endorsed Trump. And so the point is that both the Republicans and the Democrats, both Trump and Biden, had they were the presumptive nominees of their party for 2024, but they both had challengers. So they both had people challenging them in the primaries, and then they both pretended that the primaries didn't happen. So, and they both refused to debate any of their primary challengers, yet alone hardly acknowledge them. So, I was not thrilled about either option, and pretty much from the start, I mean, I didn't vote for either major party in 2020. I voted for Howie Hawkins of the Green Party, and knowing that he couldn't win, and I did the same in 2024, knowing that Jill Stein couldn't win, but just hoping maybe she would get the 5% national total of the vote that could give her more mainstream access and federal funding and be taken more seriously as a third party contender. So that was a big problem from the beginning to the end of the election cycle, that third party candidates were not taken seriously at all, and not talked about, and when they were talked about it, they were derided and insulted and laughed out. So so both Trump and Biden get through the nomination, or they get through the primaries as the leaders of the winners of the primaries pretty easily, and I think that's a problem, that they wouldn't debate them, and they didn't involve themselves in the primaries, but they do that, and then we get to, well, people have been talking about Biden's health, his mental health, and how it has been declining. That had been a problem for him politically since 2020, when a lot of his Democratic opponents were criticizing him, and saying that he's not fit for office. That goes back to 2020. But really in the last year or two, especially early this year, like when Biden chose not to take the free publicity and do a speech, do some kind of interview during the Super Bowl, which is a tradition kind of that presidents will speak during the Super Bowl. Biden chose not to, and that seemed to be one more confirmation that Biden was not really fit for the interview, that he wouldn't have been able to get through it very easily, without screwing up his words and losing his train of thought. Then there was this court case involving Biden and his handling of classified documents, or I should say mishandling, in his Delaware home. There were classified documents found in Biden's Corvette, I believe it was. But the court ruled that, and the argument was made, and the court ruled, or the jury ruled, I guess, that Biden can't really be blamed for the mishandling of the documents, because he's not really, I mean, this had quotes of him like he was not able to remember his own son's, I think it was like the year his son was born or something, like he struggled to remember things that he very well should have known, and the only explanation for Biden not knowing in these transcripts in that court case were because, and his own legal defense kind of was that he was a senile old man who can't really be blamed for this. So, and that's leading up to that's in the winter, leading up into the spring. I don't remember much about the spring involving Biden. There were some situations in early June, like on D-Day, Biden kind of wandered off and looked toward and saluted one of the paratroopers, and I think it was Prime Minister Moroni, or the President of Italy. She kind of guided them back, and there were, so that was before the big debate. There was that thing on D-Day in Europe that kind of looked fishy, and the conservatives have been saying for a while that it's not a good look for Biden, and that Biden had been struggling with mental health decline for some time. But no, the mainstream media, I should say, the more liberal media, didn't take that serious. They waved it away, and but then the debate came along, and they did it way early. They did it in the end of June, which is very unusual before the election season really even begins. So Biden does bad. He does really bad as far as his ability to maintain his thoughts, and it was pretty clear that Trump won the debate just by being able to be present and cogent. And even though Trump, I'm sure, lied a lot, Biden did too. But it was clear that Trump won that debate simply by being able to complete sentences, and Biden just didn't look good at all. So since that debate, it seemed like Biden's perception, whatever reputation he had left of being cogent, and the media narrative of him being fit for the job really started to fall apart at that time. And then all this pressure from the media and what, like George Clooney and Biden and Pelosi behind the scenes, they've threatened him with the 25th Amendment to try to force him out. So finally Biden relented. Even after a few weeks after the debate, he was still from I think it was the 27th of June until like the 21st of July. Finally on that Sunday, the third Sunday of July, Biden announces he's not going to be seeking re-election. Then they pretend very briefly that there are other options. I think even on Good Morning America and other mainstream programs, they talked about Gretchen Whitmer, but very quickly it was kind of assumed that Kamala would become the nominee, and she became the nominee simply because she was vice president at the time, and she still is, of course. But in July and early August, there was no other Democrat challenged her. There were no Democrats who were really even willing to challenge her. So Kamala won the nomination simply by having no challengers, and the media, of course, was already pushing her. They flirted with Gretchen Whitmer, but as soon as Biden endorsed Kamala and said that she should do it, and Kamala already having already had been vice president and being vice president, it seemed like it was inevitable she would get the nomination, and she did a few weeks later. I guess in late August, she got the nomination. Everybody was making a big deal about her, and she was up by like 5 points at one point, and fluctuating around there. I remember saying then that she had a disadvantage simply because she had to enter the race so late, and then she had Biden kind of hanging around her neck, like Biden being the president and her being the vice president. Like, it's kind of hard for her to say that she's not the establishment, that she's not part of the administration that's currently in power. She's the sitting vice president, and Trump is kind of frames himself as an anti-establishment figure. So Kamala being in that race and pretending that she was a new voice for America and that she was going to turn the page, like her big thing was turning the page. She talked about it a lot, and Kamala turning the page really meant, like, it's hard to know what it means, because turning the page on what? Turning the page on the current administration, because that's her and Biden. Or does it mean turning the page on about a decade of thinking and focusing and worrying about Trump? I think that's what she meant, but it didn't really make sense because she was currently in power, and the problems in the country, inflation, foreign policy, other social problems, but everything has to lay on the doorstep of the Biden and Harris White House. So it's hard for her to really say that she's not. And I thought that was a problem for her from the start of her nomination and leading into the nomination and throughout the election cycle. It was going to be a problem for her that she was currently the vice president and she had to step in at the last minute because of Biden's, she never talked about it. The media stopped talking about it. It was amazing how the media went from criticizing Biden and bringing on people, scientists or doctors who claimed that Biden had Parkinson's. Like they were really attacking him, and the attacks were only going to get worse leading up to the convention. Except that Biden finally relented once all the elders of the party, Nancy Pelosi, Barack Obama, plus the entire media and many celebrities and all of these donors were saying that they weren't going to donate if Biden was the nominee. Biden relented, and then the media zipped their lips and never talked about his health again, pretty much throughout the entire rest of the election cycle, and still to this day, the media has completely stopped talking about Biden's health. They talked about it a heck of a lot when in those first 2 or 3 weeks as Biden was still the nominee, but the presumptive nominee. But after Biden dropped out, that conversation about his health completely stopped. They never. It felt like I felt like I was insane for being like, am I the only one who thinks it's strange that no one talks about the fact that Kamala had to know about his health? Like, it's not just Biden's lie and the media's lie. It's also Kamala's lie. It's also many Democrats' lie, particularly Kamala, because she was in the White House making decisions with him, meeting with him on a daily, weekly basis. So there's no way Kamala didn't know about Biden's mental health, and she just sat there on the sidelines, kind of as the vice president, prepared to let Biden continue running, knowing that Biden was not fit. She had to know that he wasn't fit for office at that point, but she kept her mouth shut for political reasons. And it seems clear that the goal was, if Biden wins, then Biden will have to step down at some point during his second term, and Kamala will become the president. There's even people today who are saying, the best thing would be for Biden, even after Kamala loses the election, the best thing would be for Biden to step down, give Kamala the presidency for a month, and let her be the first woman president for a month after, and then immediately hand it over to Trump. Completely ridiculous. But anyway, so I could go on a while about this, but the point is that Trump wins, and he won by a pretty comfortable margin. He won by the popular vote by like 3 million votes. He won by 3 million votes, and he won, I think the Electoral College total was 312 to 216 or 17, something like that. So Kamala lost pretty bad. Like, the main states, the states that everybody was talking about were Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, North Carolina, Arizona, Nevada. And Trump's path to victory still looked good, even when everybody was saying, oh, this is not looking good for Trump. Everybody was saying, Trump's losing the election. I never thought that. I always thought that Trump was likely to win. In fact, I thought he was in the best position to win that he really had ever been from 2016 onward. His worst position was in 2020. But I still thought, sometime in September, when everybody was saying how good Kamala was doing in the polls, I was saying, well, no, Biden at that point had 9 or 10 points ahead of Trump. He barely beat Trump, by 45,000 votes in Arizona, Wisconsin, and Georgia. If Biden lost those 45,000 votes in those states, Trump would have won. So really, the 2020 election was really close. People don't think about that, but even, so Trump lost in 2020, but Biden, they said Biden had a 10-point advantage. He didn't. In 2016, Hillary was said to be up by 7 points in September, and Hillary ended up losing to Trump. Kamala, her best polling had her at about 5 points, and I was just thinking, there's no way, unless the polling has completely changed, the way they do polling, and it's made that much more accurate, there's no way that Trump is going to lose, because Kamala needs to be winning by more than 5 points. she needs to be winning by, like, her polling was like 2, 3, 4. Best case scenario, I think it was like 5 points. And I was just thinking that's not enough. Hillary lost to Trump with a 7-point advantage. Biden barely beat Trump with like a 10-point advantage. So it's obvious that there's a bias in the polling, or the polls are just not accurate, and they always seem to trend towards benefiting the Democrats, and they are always wrong, and they're always underestimating Trump and his supporters in all 3 elections. So I thought, no, Trump is still winning. Believe it or not, don't believe what you hear, Trump is still winning. And he won big. So I'm not that surprised. And I have to say, there are a few things I like about his cabinet. If it goes through, I'm excited about the idea of Bobby Kennedy being in there for human health and human services. I'm excited for Tulsi Gabbard and her position. I think she's involved in national security. Now they haven't gotten the jobs yet, of course, and I don't think they get them until after inauguration. But if they get those jobs, those will be good things about the Trump administration. And I do think that the other thing about the Trump winning that's good is that the Democrats have to own up to their failures, and they needed to be punished. The cold truth is that the Democrats just needed to be punished for the way that they pushed Biden on us, and it's not just the Democrats, but the entire corporate media, and that the conversation about Biden's health was had way too late. Biden should have never attempted to run for office a second time. Biden was supposed to be a transition candidate. He was supposed to beat Trump, then serve 1 term, pass it off to a younger generation. He didn't do that. He wanted to stay in office, and he fought to the bitter end to stay in office, even after his disastrous debate performance. And I just think that Biden made a big mistake, and Kamala made a big mistake by staying quiet, because I think the American people don't like being lied to, and they don't like being told that Biden is healthy and fit for the job when he's clearly not. Nobody wanted to find out on that debate stage, but we did. And I think that the Democrats were kind of screwed from that point. I found that it was hard to imagine, especially his vice president, could beat Trump at that point. There were better options out there besides Kamala, but they picked Kamala. She was the closest to Biden in the White House, of course, so she would have known better than anybody about Biden's health concerns. And she kept it quiet, and she was a flawed candidate from the beginning because of that, mostly. So Trump wins. I'm sorry I haven't brought this up before, and this is probably getting to be a long video now, but Trump won, and I'm not that surprised. All right, thanks, guys.